This is the first day of the September 89 7-day retreat at Springwater. This being the first talk, and quite a number of new people being here. And also, since we cannot say it often enough to each other, ourselves, let us talk about listening and the whole problem of authority. And look at the question of what is our relationship with each other as the one who is listening and the one who is talking. It is so important that we understand clearly what is going on. In listening, in making an authority out of the person who is talking, or in talking authoritatively. Or can there be a different way of communicating with each other, which does not have its ground in wanting authority and trying to become authority or making authority, but listening together as 2, 3, 20, 30, or 50 human beings. Listening together, whether one is talking or listening. Looking at the same thing together. Not one being one or a few or several being the one who are in the know and others who don't know but aspire to know. But starting to look from not knowing and therefore from listening freshly, listening and looking freshly. Some of the things which are being said may sound like teaching or preaching. Someone said the other day to me, "You fall so easily into preaching." I'm not intending to teach or preach. What is being said here is up for investigation, for checking out, for testing for oneself, whether this is so or not. Not to believe in what is said, to take it over, commit it to memory, to draw on it from memory without looking whether it is really so for oneself. Right at the moment it is said, or in one's moment-to-moment living, the memory of what is being said here may come up. Then can one look and wonder whether this is really so? Which is a different mode of the brain than repeating, remembering and repeating and believing, which is not a mode of testing or investigating. It is a mode of going along with what is being said, having something to think about, to refer to as a comfort or a discomfort. So can our listening, this instant of listening, be free? Free from one's own beliefs and prejudices and needs and wants. Free from grasping what is being said, but listening openly, tentatively, as it were. And in that openness there, opening up a space for looking. The way we normally have been educated, trained to listen to a lecture is like a one track, listening and committing to memory, or since one is not so sure, one will remember what one heard, one will take notes. We don't usually listen to someone and haven't been trained to do that in school or college, to question, to listen with a questioning mind, which is a mind which is not firmly anchored, which our minds are to a large extent, firmly anchored in convictions, positions, beliefs, opinions, assumptions, many of which not even in our awareness. So you can say, what a paradoxical question, whether there can be listening from freedom of all of that, if the mind in fact is so anchored to beliefs, convictions. We're asking whether it's possible, for a moment maybe. For a moment to listen without anchoredness, without being held. If we say it's impossible or it's possible, then there's a hedging. But can there be this listening? We don't know. And out of not knowing, listen? In this openness of listening, we may discover how dependent we are on firm statements, firm opinions, firm beliefs, and how anxiety arises instantly when one doesn't feel in the protective grip of these beliefs anymore, when they're being questioned. And can one then be with that anxiety, with that uncertainty, feel it, allow it to be there, and yet remain open to question a belief? Or many beliefs? The belief in what I am, which we have built up over our whole lifetime, as well as the lifetime of our parents and their parents. The belief of what we are is so deeply ingrained. Being a separate, independent, free-thinking individual. This question will come up probably in every single talk. We're already touching upon it right now. We're questioning whether we are an independent, free-thinking individual. Freedom of thought has been a tremendous ideal, a tremendous value, particularly in Western civilization. The freedom to think what we want, but what are our wants based on? What are our thoughts based on? Our tendencies? have they been conditioned by the family, the society, the class we grew up in, the friends we've had, the books we've read? The values that have been imprinted into our mind and body since we were born, maybe since before we were born. And these previous conditionings, values, they affect our thinking. They direct it, they control it. Even if we are reactive to the thinking that has been imposed upon us in a school or in a home, the reaction too is not free. It is conditioned by the pain that one has endured while being indoctrinated, or coming in touch with a different group of people who think in reactionary ways, becoming aligned or belonging to a new group, and then out of that new group thinking reacting to the old thinking. So we're questioning this whole concept of freedom of thought. Thinking coming, if one watches it carefully, coming from memory, from what is remembered and stored in the brain and throughout the body. Now what is being said here may sound like teaching or preaching. It is offered to all of us, including the one who's talking, for constant examination or seeing whether this is so or not by watching our thoughts, where they come from, by carefully listening, not just to the surface layers of the conscious mind from which so many thoughts seem to spring, but deeper layers, deeper prejudices or beliefs or assumptions, which all do reveal themselves to a mind which is openly questioning its own functioning, its own responses. Something else that we will begin to examine right now and will be examining all along, it always comes up again, is, do we have images of each other? Images of a teacher here, a person that one has some knowledge about, has read something about or heard something about, as well of one's whole past imagery of people who sit in the position of a teacher and talk, as it were, from the position of a teacher. Is there a whole host of imagery connected with that relationship? And therefore, one cannot be in direct contact with the person who's talking, in a contact free from imagery, which then would be a contact of looking together, not as teacher and student or knower and not knower, but as two human beings examining the same things, looking at the same problems together. So have we images of the other, and do we have images of ourselves? Of course we do, we all do. We've lived with them for a whole lifetime and we're attached to them. Even if they're negative images, there's attachment, a negative kind of attachment. Attachment meaning not being able to let go of feelings of being unimportant, insignificant, or not as good as others, not lovable or likable, stupid, slow, quick, intelligent or not as intelligent as others. All the imagery we have about being a man or a woman, cultured, conditioned, ancient images. And what we just started out with, the image of being a student in the presence of a teacher. If that image is strong, it will affect our listening and relating to each other. Because any image impacts the freedom of listening. And communicating with each other. I happen to be talking, but I'm also listening. And when you come to meeting, if you have something to say, to ask, to state, to relate, I'll be listening. Not as someone separate from you, judging, evaluating, fitting it into some kind of a system or psychology or whatever, but listening with interest, with affection for each other. So is it possible, here comes the second question, is it possible to listen without making something out of oneself or out of the other through the thoughts about oneself and the other? Because the moment we think about oneself or the other in these terms or those terms, we're making something out of what? Out of two human beings communicating simply. Can it remain at a simple level without complicating it? Of what the mind spins around oneself and the other through images and thoughts, ideas. The answer is not yes or no. The answer is in looking, in watching the spinning, the webbing that takes place. And where there's a web, there's caughtness in it. What I am, what she is or he is. And the caughtness in a web of imagery and thought, ideas, prevents open, free inquiry and listening and looking. And yet the marvelous thing is that it can be discovered. One can have direct, or let's say, there can be direct insight into an image arising about oneself being inferior, stupid, or very smart, very capable. There can be direct insight into this image arising in the mind from memory and the effect that this image has at this moment of arising on listening. If the moment before there was an openness of listening, it can be directly observed how the openness narrows and becomes confining and narrow when there is a thought about myself being this or that, and she or he being this or that. And there's this confinement of me and you and our missing each other, not being completely related. We can only be completely related if there is no image in the way. Does that make sense? Can that be looked at? Can that be seen, discovered? In listening to a talk, coming to a talk, I think we mentioned it last night, to find the most comfortable chair and position. We have lots of cushions to put on the back, or if the feet maybe don't touch the ground completely, chair's too high, then put a cushion underneath the feet so that you can relax into attending to what is going on. Inside, the words, what they arouse within, and the sound of the insects, which need not interfere with listening. Sound of the traffic, a bird calling, the breath coming and going. So can one sit comfortably? Also, if the position becomes uncomfortable after a while, as is already happening, feel free to change the position of your legs. We're just wondering whether one can do it quietly, attentively. Attentively means sensitive to the fact that there are other people here too. And it can become distracting to someone next to me while I change my posture. Why? Why does it become distracting? This question is often asked when we are examining whether we are over sensitive to try to keep it quiet as possible in the sitting room particularly. We often discuss this in staff meetings. It's being challenged by people. Are we getting too involved in this, too fussy, too compulsive? Then we look at it. Why would it disturb, somebody would say, if somebody moves? Why does it disturb? We can watch it. The function of the brain, since time immemorial, is to find out what's going on and guard against possible danger. That's one of its functions. And anything that moves, the eye follows and the brain tries to scan the files. What is that? Is that dangerous to me or interesting to me? Another function beside guarding from danger is to find pleasure. Find things that are pleasurable, convenient. But there's something on the move there, to find things on the move and interpret them. Think some more about it. That's why, particularly if the mind isn't open and this function of the brain has quieted down. That's why when it hasn't quieted down and the mind isn't open, any sound one starts thinking about. Any unusual sound or sight elicits a train of thought from the brain, and the thoughts, of course, are associated with bodily feelings and emotions. So to the extent that someone moves with great care and awareness, there may be some of that caring awareness conveying itself to the neighbor, to someone else. And the brain not needing to react to the sound, the movement. Test it out for yourself. It's marvelous that everything is open to investigation and discovery. One can also find out that if one gets irritated by someone making a sound, the irritation is already the consequence of thoughts. Why does she have to make so much noise? I'm quiet, why can't she or he? And it's an ancient pattern, isn't it? Rivalry in quietness or in noise making. Feeling annoyed if someone doesn't obey rules that oneself feels one is subjecting oneself to. Feeling everyone should be doing the same thing, and if not, anger or irritation arising. Doesn't have to be this way, but when we do get irritated by what someone else does, can one not just be caught in the endless web of irritation and feelings and new thoughts about it and new feelings, but wonder about what's going on? What is happening right now in this feeling, quote unquote, irritated? What is the process that brings it about, that fuels it, that maintains it? Can one grasp it, get a hold of it directly by looking and listening? One is able to see that there was thought about what the other should do, what I am doing, that triggers all of these irritated feelings, there's a great relief. One has discovered something. And of course, the more one thinks, the more the irritation. But if one doesn't continue thinking that way, the irritation that was aroused throughout the nervous system, body, organs, muscles, sort of peters out. Maintains itself for a while as long as the initial chemicals last, and then it vanishes because the thoughts don't incite it any longer. That's an amazing thing to discover for oneself. Is one interested? Or is one solely interested in reaching or attaining a state of quietness, which one either imagines or remembers having had in the past? Maybe having a practice, repeating a mantra or a word, a sound or a koan, or fixing the attention on the breathing. Because one wants that state and hopes to attain it. With this kind of program running, there is also great irritation at anybody who would interfere with that. Who would make noise to distract me. I almost got there until he moved or she did that. And then the same irritation as when we want something, we almost have it, and somebody else messes it up, takes it away from us. We've been angered by that since we were tiny little children. When a whole body-mind system that is on go is frustrated or prevented from getting what it's going for. Through fantasy and all the emotions and muscular tensions that go with our fantasies and our goals. When there's frustration of that, is irritation, anger. And those thoughts, which are observable, thoughts coming up. Why did she do this? I don't have to improvise all of this. Everybody knows that, can look at it. These thoughts arouse the irritation, or further irritation, because a frustrated go system also has some kind of a chemical result, electrical, neurological result, but is on the way and something happens. The interruption of a movement toward something in itself brings an upset, a physiological upset, and of course a psychological upset. They're both there. They both enhance and augment each other. And most of the time we're caught up in that. All day long, all night long. And here we're asking, can there be some light shed on it? Or some space open up in which this can be seen as it happens, without being completely caught up in it? And what's the difference between these two states? The state of caught upness and the state of awareness. One person, before I start what one person said, let me say that most of the talks during this week, except maybe the last one, will take as their basis questions that people ask or things that are being brought up in meetings. And however then that operates in this brain. Not trying to expose anybody here, trying to be very careful in that what is brought up does not point to anybody, so hope no one is worried about this. There's never been any problem. Except one time, I think I'll relate this to you. One time I mentioned something as a topic for a talk. Again, not exposing this person, but the person came in and told me how angry he got when I said that. And I had a sinking feeling. I felt terrible. And the person laughed. He said, I saw it was just an image of myself. He was actually done quicker with it than I was. I was still going to apologize. He said, don't apologize, just an image that I was attached to about myself. That was what got angry or hurt. In bringing up a question or something that was related or talked about in a meeting, I will not remember what was said verbatim, either by you or me. And it may also become a conglomerate thing of other people having brought up similar things, which often happens that at the same time of meetings, different people bring up similar questions. So the question as it is phrased here may not be precisely as you phrased it, which does not mean I'm misquoting or intentionally or did not understand what was being said. But if such a feeling remains, then please bring it up again. Because these talks and meetings and sittings are there to unfold what is happening in ourselves, so that there can be a shift from being caught in the web to being aware of the web, which is an entirely different way of being. So coming back now to what someone brought up, rephrased. There's so many thoughts going on when I'm here sitting for longer periods. At home, when I sit for a brief period, it's really quite wonderful. I get a moment of quiet and things that were bothering me have a way of dropping away. But here in longer sittings, it seems almost endless thinking and the feelings and emotions that go with it. And realizing how much memory is involved in all of that. And then wondering what is real in all of that. What is real? What is now? What is nowness? Or the real thing right now as these thoughts and emotions, memories churn away. What is real? When we have had training from spiritual training centers or read Eastern scriptures, and frequently come upon this expression that all is illusion. All our thoughts are illusion. Oneself is an illusion. The world is an illusion. I remember that myself and having a very hard time to deal with that. What did that mean? It seemed to fog things rather than clarify. Because a thought arising is real. A thought arising, the process of which I don't know anybody knows too much about yet. But it's measurable on instruments, electrical instruments hooked up to the brain. A thought has a measurable energy and has electrochemical, neurological, whatever all the names are, processes going on. So there's something real going on. It's not illusory. A thought arising and triggering adrenaline throughout the body, which precipitates a feeling that we call fear or aggression. There's a real process going on. Neurological, chemical, electrical, whatever process. But as we put it, in thinking that thought about home or one's sweetheart, a vacation one is about to take in the mountains, or a vacation one took on the beach, There is a feeling, isn't there? It's not even a feeling that it's real. It feels real. It's real. One has to wake up from that fantasy or dream to find out that one has been fantasizing or dreaming. It wasn't just awareness that a thought has triggered all kinds of feelings. One is on the beach, or one is in the mountains, or one is arguing with someone. Feeling angrier and angrier about somebody who said something or did something to one. Maybe so real that one is ready to storm out and go and see that person and give him or her a piece of one's mind, as though it just happened. And that angry scene is not real or the scene in the mountains or on the beach is not real in terms of happening right now. It's a projected memory, like a movie. Has the reality of a movie or a video. And while it is going on and being so engrossing, because thoughts and fantasies get the whole organism going. While it's going on, there may be no in-touchness whatsoever with the sound, the insects, the traffic, the coolness of the air, the breathing that is taking place. Maybe not even in touchness with a pain in the knee or back. So the person said it's all so confusing. Is the confusion lifting somewhat in seeing that thought and physical reaction to thought is real? But the involvement or entanglement in the content of the thought, as though it was something real was taking place right now, that separates one off, closes one off to the actuality of this moment, which is the heat and cold, the sounds, and the fact that thoughts are going on and triggering a tremendous amount of emotions, and the fact that one was for a moment or a half an hour completely caught up in that, which is what awareness brings to light, if one does come to. Does that make some sense? Is that clear? Please, if you're interested in this, and you want to go through it again, or you think I didn't put this properly, or didn't say it all right, or so, let's go over it in a meeting. Not over this, but we can start something new. That's the beauty of looking. We don't have to try to remember all that we said right now and felt. We can look at what we're seeing and saying and feeling right now, at this instant of looking, which does not exclude evoking memory. That can also be such a confusing thing, labeling everything that's memory as illusory. The word illusion does not help. Not in this connection. Maybe there's another connection which it does. We can right now evoke the memory of our home where we live, and there it is. One can see that this is memory. It's a thought. One can maybe already is thinking about home, how much nicer it would be to be there, or how much nicer it is to be here. From the memory can come endless outpourings of thought. But the memory right now of one's home, if one tries to visualize it internally, has a reality to it, but it's not the reality of when you stand right in front of your home and look at it. Although we'll talk about that too. What reality does that have? But this is something that sort of fades in and out. It's something a little bit vague. Or sometimes when it's caught up in fantasy and memory, it is not even vague. It's very colorful. I don't know whether you know this kind of a dream where one is walking along a curb and maybe steps off the curb, and almost as though one sprained one's ankle in bed. One moved the limb. So we said a little moment ago, the eliciting of a memory of home, where one lives, one's room, is not quite as clear as looking at that room when you're standing there, in the room. Is that more real? Looking at the room as you're standing in there, then evoking the memory? And looking at the memory? If the memory is vague, not quite as clear as when one stands in the room, that's also real. Its vagueness is real. That's what's happening right now. I'm looking at this and it's not as clear as when I stand in that room. We're still looking with awareness at a memory. But if there's no awareness of looking at memory, then the memory takes over and is as though one was living there in that room. Is that hard? Because we're going to ask another question. In really being in the room and looking at it, and for that let's slip out of memory and look at something that's right in front of us, the floor or a mat, whatever one sees in front of one. Is that real? Can that be seen directly as it is? Or in looking at it, there's all kinds of reactions. What a beautiful floor, what a not so beautiful floor. The fact that it is a floor, and the mind may say, how did they put that in here, and why did they get these curves in here? They didn't sand that properly. Then the mind is caught up in reaction, in knowledge, image, memory, judgment, and therefore we don't see this floor directly. Sometimes people say it's impossible to see something without a reaction, without the word coming up, the naming of it, and then the associations with a name, with a word, and one's reactions to floors. It's impossible, some people say. You're just painting ideal pies in the sky. It's not possible to see something without thought or image directly. If one feels that way, then it's very difficult to see something directly. But can one see the feeling directly, the conviction, the idea that it's impossible? And can one see reactions and words coming up and notice that the word floor, the idea floor or pine floor or whatever this is not this thing here. It has the reality of a word, of a concept, But the concept is not this thing here. Can that sort of sort out of the confusion? That the word insect chirping is not this what that actually is after the word has come up or before the next word comes up. What that actually is, we don't know, but it can be heard. It's there. When the mind is open and not caught completely in the word and the reaction. And the sound is much clearer, and also the process of reacting becomes much clearer. And what that does to listening. How it impacts the listening. So when we go for a walk or pour a cup of water, lie down on the bed, what's a sleeping bag if it's not a concept? Can we look at it? Look at the gravel on the drive. Listen to the water pouring into the cup, the feel of the pitcher, cold metal in the warm hand, and the feel of the cup as it fills. It's getting cooler. And drinking it. Not, I must pay attention. We're not talking about that. We're wondering what everything is when we're not totally caught up in the idea of it or the reaction to it, the memory of it, the knowledge about it. Then what is everything? We will end here for today.